Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our sixth installment of our brown bag lunch design presentations for the Del Rio Trail. My name is Donald Gensler. I run our public art program here in the city of Sacramento. I'm joined by three members of our team, Beth Jones, Linda Jolly, and back behind the scenes is Diana Rufner, helping us with technical support. We're really thrilled that all of you are here today. We are here with Adam Frank and excited to have Adam present to you all his proposal for the Del Rio Trail. Adam was one of 5 artists selected to create a kind of wayfinding in a certain segment of the trail. And I've been just felt really fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with Adam and see his kind of development of this project and in its relationship to the site. So it's been a real treat. Adam has shown across the country and multiple locations, often utilizes technology and new media in his work. He's based in Brooklyn, New York, but again, works in so many different areas. We're really thrilled to have Adam here with us today. Before we jump in, a couple of housekeeping matters. If you would keep your comments, you can write comments in the chat or questions, and then we'll address those after Adam finishes his presentation. And also, after the presentation is completed, please, this is all about having some opportunities for discussion and dialogue around this really exciting work. Also want to mention that this is the final week for our Del Rio Trail Phase 1 Before and Beyond exhibition at the Twisted Track Gallery. So if you're in town and here till July 29th, the show will be coming down July 29th. We hope you will come see the show. It's open Friday evening and Saturday evening this week. It's a wonderful show of 20 artists from this area that were tasked with the idea of really creating work about the Del Rio Trail. And they really helped to engage us and also a number of residents throughout Sacramento in many different ways. So there's many disciplines, from musicians to artists, to visual artists, to videographers and photographers and many other different disciplines as well. So I encourage you to see that work. This is a 5-mile trail moving from Pocket Road all the way up to Riverside Boulevard here in Sacramento. It is quite a project that I think will change the landscape in many ways of how we are able to get around Sacramento. And we're thrilled that the Department of Transportation or the state grant, Clean Act grant, helped fund 27 artists, 7 of which are doing permanent public sculpture along the trail. So we're thrilled to be working with Caltrans and our other partners and working across different departments here at the city of Sacramento. So why don't we just jump in, Adam? With no further dialogue, I'll just let you take the reins, and we'll start back up with some discussion after you've concluded.
All right, thanks, Donald. Can everyone hear me? Thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to share my screen here and share the presentation. Just hold on a second. Okay. So, Donald, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Donald?
Yes. Perfect. Mm-hmm.
Great. All right. So first of all, thanks everyone for coming. I am very excited to be a part of this. I am a native Californian. I work from Brooklyn, but I was born and raised in the Bay Area, and I know Sacramento pretty well. And it's really wonderful for me to work in my native home state. I'm also working in San Diego currently with a native population, and I often do these very large-scale public permanent installations for cities that are site-specific, but also use light and our perception in new ways. And so, but my work is really heavily site-specific, as you will see, and it really is about trying to add meaning and accessibility and inclusiveness and some kind of specialness to a site, if I can. And I work really hard at making things that are maximally inclusive, but still meaningful. So I'm going to go through this presentation. My presentation is called Wayfinder. And I'm only going to talk for maybe, I don't know, 18 minutes or so, and there'll be plenty of time for questions. I'm happy to answer everything, anything that anyone comes up with. So this is a concept and partly finished design for a really thoughtful approach to making an iconic work, a truly iconic work of art for the Del Rio Trail. And everyone should know that, of course, this design is a work in progress, and I'm continually refining it and refining it and refining it. But this is a really great opportunity to be able to share where I am with the project. So we are all familiar with images like this. And of course, the city of Sacramento, as everyone probably knows, is the terminus for the Transcontinental Railroad and was a really key part of its construction. So these images that are embedded in all of Americans' consciousness, these images of railroad tracks disappearing into the distance, they really represent optimism and hope of the American West. It's like a pure representation of optimism and hope. And, the railroad tracks themselves, of course, symbolize and embody progress, growth, and the opening of new frontiers. They evoke a pioneering spirit of the American people, a true pioneering spirit, and the belief in the promise of the West as a land of opportunity and prosperity. That's what these tracks mean culturally, I believe. So with that as a jumping off point, I am going to be building Wayfinder, which is a sculpture that you see here. And really, the purest way to describe this piece is a Wayfinder is a railroad track that connects us to the infinite. It connects us to the infinite. It really does provide the new Del Rio Trail with a tangible icon of infinite potential to really mark the trailhead. So that's what I'm going for here. So this is an extremely unique idea. It doesn't exist anywhere else, and I'll show you why it's unique in this presentation. But what you're looking at is a new type of impossible object and meaningful site-specific illusion. So this is what I kind of specialize in. But each of my works are site-specific in technique and material and technology. So this is the new technique that we're using here as well. Now, this piece will make people feel as if they can touch the sky. So the original rails of the Del Rio Trail, which actually still exist there and will be there next to the trail, conform to a US standard, which is 4 and 8.5 inches wide between the two tracks. And this sculpture will preserve this dimension and all historical details on the starting rung of the sculpture at the bottom of the sculpture. Now, as the sculpture climbs upwards slowly, every dimension reduces until it reaches a point about 30 feet in the air. Now, what this does is create a forced perspective illusion in 3 dimensions and makes the structure appear to be infinitely tall from all vantage points. So what we're talking about here is a very, very powerful illusion here. And I'm going to go over why specifically this is a uniquely powerful illusion. So one of the ways our eyes work is that after about 15 feet, we lose depth perception from binocular disparity. All this means is that the distance between our 2 eyes no longer makes much of a difference after 15 feet. So our brains, our perceptual mechanism, has to look for other cues to tell us what is really big and really small and really far and really near. So we're looking for depth cues. And in this particular case, the sculpture is framed in the sky, and thus it provides no contextual clues or cues to compare size to other than the full-scale rail ties at the sculpture's base. So another way we determine size at this distance is through perspective. And as I've said, Wayfinder will use, in order to make this, Wayfinder will use an algorithm and computer-aided design to perfectly distort perspective in all dimensions. So this is a really innovative example of forced perspective. Now, forced perspective is a really ancient technique, and it's been used throughout the ages in art and architecture, stagecraft. Disneyland uses it. It's a filmmaking technique. It's an old filmmaking technique used famously in Citizen Kane. So it's a common technique. Now, adding to this, another way we determine size at a very far distance is through atmospheric haze. And that just means that the further away something is, the less clear it is. It looks hazy because there's all these particles in the air scattering light in front of you. So as it goes into the distance, it sort of fades out. And so what we're going to be doing here in Wayfinder is carefully simulate this effect with a very subtle fading surface treatment at the top of the sculpture itself. So this is a new technique here. Now, what you're looking at on the right is a little prototype that I quickly put together. It's an 18-inch prototype, and there's a little bit of a, spray paint at the tip to simulate this kind of surface treatment. And this object is a very strange object to hold, as you might imagine. I'll show it to you at the end of the presentation, but this is what it looks like. When we combine all of the techniques I've mentioned, it produces a unique, powerful visual experience. And the sculpture really will look like it disappears into the sky. Now, another interesting thing about this kind of powerful illusion is the vanishing points are move. So one interesting thing is the illusion changes as viewers approach the sculpture. So if they're very, very far away from the sculpture, it will appear as if the tracks are going off away from them in the distance. And I'm representing this picture with this green kind of triangle you see. And as you walk towards the sculpture, the illusion will be that the sculpture erects and starts to go straight up into the sky. So this is an interesting part of this sculpture. And we do support in this sculpture very, very views from very long, very far away. So I'm working on both near and far views here. So the location, as Donald was referring to, is in this green area here. it's between the intersection of Pocket Road in Freeport and Zeeburg Park. Now, this is a great site for many reasons. It's really unique on the trail, actually, because it's the highest point of the trail. And it has viewpoints from very, very far away, which, as I said, really helps the piece. Now, all viewpoints will be angled upward because, of course, it's the highest point in the trail. And this really helps the illusion the sculpture creates. So, as I said, it's viewable from far away, all the way down Freeport Boulevard. It should be viewable. So what this means is this allows the work to function, have for the maximum amount of people. A lot of people will see this. And it allows it to be an iconic trailhead that sort of announces the presence of this new public space. Of course, I just want to emphasize the exact location and orientation will be determined by site visit, by the city, by engineers, by me and Donald in the engineering phase and the design phase, and that's the next phase to come. So these are just an area which we have targeted, but we still need to site the work exactly. So this piece will be made out of permanent materials. It'll be made from cast bronze, steel, and reinforced concrete. So these materials will have a very durable surface treatment that make them appear to be made of the same materials as the original tracks, but they really mostly won't be, because we want it to be permanent. So it will look like the original tracks, but it won't be made of wood. And the lower third of the sculpture will be embedded in concrete and treated with a silicon-based anti-graffiti coating at the base there. So I wanted to talk a little bit about safety. All public art requires a safety check here. So the sculpture and all the sculpture attachments to the ground will be created in collaboration with a professional California licensed structural engineer, of course. And this work appears to be infinitely tall. That's the work itself, but it really is only 30 feet tall. And the illustration on the right here is to scale to the average person's height. So, of course, all structures are climbable, but for a comparison's sake, in the surrounding area, there are trees, which are climbable, of course. There are PG&E poles, which are 30 feet to 60 feet. There are streetlights, which are 30 feet to 40 feet. And all of those are taller than this sculpture. And the sculpture's base will be embedded in this 9-foot tall sealed sort of rectangle. So that what that means is that all the faces of the ties and the rails are visible, but there are no handholds. So there are no handholds or footholds within anyone's reach in this sculpture. So the sculpture will be also placed on a very steep embankment. And this means that it's going to be very difficult for people to actually reach this sculpture from pedestrian walkways. Of course, another thing I want to point out here is that the structure does not have handholds above around 15 feet because it becomes very small. I mean, very, very small and sharp. And it's like climbing a pole. Well, there'll be signage that says "do not climb," as there are in all sculptures too. So all in all, this sculpture appears to be infinitely tall. No one will know how tall this is because that's the point of the sculpture, but really it's actually quite safe, and it's only 30 feet tall. And there are a lot of impediments to trying to climb this thing. So I want to talk a little bit about why I think Wayfinder is an important artwork It's an important artwork for this site, I think, for Sacramento and for the state in general. I think this is the right artwork for this location. So what I'm trying to do here is make a pure representation of hope and inspiration, of something as pure as I possibly can make. So, my work often appears to be minimal in the sense that I take everything else away and I'm trying to leave only the core of the idea here, to be pure, to be straightforward. Now, one of the reasons to do this approach is to be maximally inclusive. And I mentioned this before, but this is a real important part of my practice. It's important, I believe, for public space in general. When you make art in public space, you have a responsibility to every viewer. And this work itself does not require special knowledge or education to appreciate. It's meant for children. It's meant for adults of all socioeconomic backgrounds. It is meant for people that don't speak English or don't know anything about artwork. It's really meant for everyone. And in that way, it really does maximize inclusivity. Now, of course, this piece is completely site-specific. It replicates, preserves, and celebrates the origins of the Del Rio Trail. It directly references the optimism and potential that Sacramento is built on as the terminus of the transcontinental rail line. And, I just want to emphasize that this really is a completely unique, monumental, tactile illusion that we're talking about. This does not exist, okay? It appears to be an impossible object from every viewing angle and from very, very far away. So this piece allows a really unprecedented experience of directly perceiving the infinite. We have a hard time perceiving the infinite. When we look up in the sky, obviously we're seeing infinite, but we don't feel it because we see this balloonness. This will give us this sensation that we're actually perceiving infinity. And this I like this idea that it's a two-way connection between the viewer and unbounded potential. So it's an up and down connection. What I really want to make here, and what I believe this piece will represent, is a beacon of hope, of wonder, and discovery for everyone in Sacramento. So that is the end of my Wayfinder presentation. And I'd be happy to take some questions. I might stop sharing now. Let's see. And I can take some questions. One thing to note here is the this very strange thing. This is just this prototype, very quick prototype I made. It has some spray paint over here, but you can see that it's a very unusual object here, and it's very strange to hold this thing. But this is just a test to make sure that all my assumptions were correct. And then behind me, you can see this shape on the wall here. This is a scale, this is to scale what the base will be. So my studio got a little dark because it started to rain in New York, but you can see I'm 100% average as a person. So this is the base, for the size of the base. When you do scale artwork, you really have to do these kinds of things to make sure your scale is, on target. So, so that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any, but I just want to emphasize how excited I am for this opportunity to make something like this. It's really new. Oh, that was just thunder. I always want to emphasize this is a really new approach to making public art here, and I'm excited to be able to do it. I really am. So I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity.
That's great. No, thank you, Adam. The presentation was excellent. I appreciate you going through all aspects of that. and I appreciate you taking the specific time on the safety issues that, of course, we've discussed at length. And I feel really comfortable with this approach right now. I'd like to talk just briefly about your fabrication of the sculpture. That was one thing that I remember we had talked about. Could you just talk a little bit about like the importance for you in terms of the detailing? And I know people won't be right up next to it, but it is potentially accessible. There's not going to be a path to it, but people will be able to see some details. So could you just talk a little bit about that, kind of the craftsmanship of it and how important that is to you?
Well, first of all, the actual engineering and how this is constructed is in the next phase. I just want to emphasize that. But I'm talking to two separate foundries about how to make this. But we're going to be using castings. So you'll see bolt heads, for instance. They won't be real bolt heads in the sense that, you know, they were, but they will appear to be real. But they'll be actually in the casting themselves. So the actual craftsmanship that was used, the method of construction that was used originally in the original tracks will be represented in the sculpture. So that's important to me. I want to see like this hole is in this bracket with this screw head and this nut here, you know. So, and all of those little details, all of those details get smaller and smaller as it goes up. So every single nut, every single bolt, every single dimension.
That's the computer aided design aspect of it that you're talking about. I mean, that's what's really, you know, that's what's interesting here is you're not just building a big rail line, but it's like literally every step of the way it's getting increasingly smaller to be able to create this illusion.
Right.
I wanted to point out in terms of illusion, though, I have to say, Adam, it's fascinating to me to have looked at your past work. And I know this was always, you know, this even came up in the panel, you know, I remember them discussing it, you know, about, you know, he's an illusionist and he uses video and all this. And I just remember thinking, well, we'll see, you know, and I think the panel ultimately came to the conclusion to say, you know, he's got the skills and ability to do this, you know, within the constraints, because you didn't have the option to utilize video or light or things like that here on the trail. So for me, it's really quite interesting to see this. I mean, you may have done other work that, you know, employs these types of kind of this physicality of illusion, but for me, it's great to see just how you've kind of solved this, but that still feels to me very much within your own creative practice. So it's that, for me, that the strong thing about this public art here is that you're responsive to the site. You're thinking about the history. You know, like I think you mentioned to me, you went over to the Railroad Museum, you know, so that this is an important part of, you know, the history of this trail is the railroad. And so you've dove into that, but then you also are kind of being very true to your creative, at least that's my perception. You're very true to your kind of creative voice and the type of work that you make.
You know, the way I look at it is I work with human perception, basically. So, you know, and there's many ways of going about doing that. So I often work directly with light and projection, but in this case, I am working with light as well.
Absolutely.
So it's just using sculpture in a new way to manipulate people's perceptions, basically. And that's, you know, that's how I look at it. And yeah, I'm really glad that you guys have given me this opportunity. It's really pushed me in a new direction. And you know, as I said, I'm from this area. I'm from California, you know, so it really means a lot to me to be able to, you know, install in Sacramento.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Any other comments or questions? I have a couple other ones, but just want to give folks a chance. Beth?
Well, I think one of the things that occurred to me before as we were in discussions about what this was going to be, but I think today it came together in a different way or a better way, and that is the word hope. And you know, when we think about history. As we know, we've been dissecting history a lot in our country. And of course, the West is full of, you know, renegades and people who took advantage of people and all that kind of stuff. But I think the spirit in a time, you know, that when we were developing the frontier and when people were so like courageous and bold to do some of the things they did, it takes like the best part of the idea of the Transcontinental Railroad and Sacramento and the people involved, and even this little railroad that, you know, brought bounty from the Delta to Sacramento. So I guess it's become even more like that for me, that word hope. In your piece.
Thank you. I do think that it's important to make hopeful things around now.
Oh, yeah, me
We've all been
too.
through, the whole country, the whole world maybe, but you know, we've all been through something with COVID and all that. And you know, it's nice to make something hopeful and interesting and new, you know. And I think I try and just do things just straight like that, you know, represent hope in some way, you know, to be positive in some way, you know. And I often think about kids, you know, growing up around these works, because
Yes.
you know, these are permanent artworks. We're not talking about, so this time scale that we're dealing with, I think about myself growing up in San Francisco and Oakland, and how, you know, there weren't these things really that much of, you know, but if I had things like this, I could understand them over the course of my life, and they would be part of my life, you know. And I mean, the architecture was there, but we didn't have a lot of public art around me. And I think a lot about young people and hope, basically. And that's why I want to make this, really, you know.
And I thought I liked your conversation around accessibility. I think that you know, it's an important aspect also of public art. We are making art accessible to everyone, hopefully. You know, and you know, while I love to go to a show in a gallery, it's different to put artwork in the public realm, where people can see it without having to kind of, you know, either walk into a gallery or enter into some kind of transaction to be able to enter into a museum. It's there, they live with it, they see it, they may think about it, they may not think about it. So I think that's really nice. We are, as I mentioned a couple times, we're actively working to create an entire kind of signage campaign. And while I do like the idea that people will just immediately be able to relate to it, I do think that there may be a nice opportunity to have some additional kind of information that you would want to provide about the work. And then we'll be meeting actually in August with a team, including our history center, to kind of determine, you know, his signs and kind of plaques that will help kind of explain some of the history of the trail. And of course, the railroad will be a big part of that history, as will be the ecology along the trail, and the indigenous communities that were along the trail prior to any of us being here. So just a lot of good opportunities to discuss this site, and that your piece, I think, kind of helps shed some light, or at least bring some interest to that idea of the railroad of infinite possibility. I mean, yesterday during Stephen Glassman's presentation, we talked a bit about, you know, this notion of the rail and the highway and the river, and all, you know, these three things that really are right next to this trail, that have been a kind of a change over time in how we transport our goods across the country. And so, yeah, I think all of that is really interesting and helps, you know, make this very much a destination spot for Sacramento to see the work, but also to think about the history, and then also hopefully just enjoy enjoy the ride, right? So, and my hope is that we eventually might even have somebody sets up shop to, rent bicycles that you can go take your bike and just go do the trail and come back for hopefully a reasonable cost, or maybe we can get some jump bikes or something that are in that local line bikes or whatever, who's ever running it now. So, yeah, so many good things to think about. Beth?
I just had a question kind of for you, but I think there's, this, of course, will be one of the largest pieces of public art in that area. Is there other public art in that kind of neighborhood? I know the piece at the fire station on 35th.
Yeah, I
know
mean, there's
that's one,
pieces
like-
there's pieces all throughout the city. I can't rattle off right now the exact art in the area. I will say we have looked at and continue to look at the equity around public art around our city, and the kind of the lack of access to it in many of our neighborhoods. There is some mostly in our parks.
Right.
And we do our box wraps and things like that, but a lot of the artwork has been centered towards our kind of central downtown, midtown corridor area. Oftentimes that's where the buildings are being built, which is where the funds have generally come from our 2% for public art ordinance. Of course, this project is not coming at all from that. And this project is state funded and then allows us to create this public art in a totally different area along this trail. So yeah, I feel really good about that and want to make sure that we also take this opportunity to kind of celebrate that. We don't just kind of place it and just move on to the next thing. We really want to celebrate this trail and all of the potential that it'll bring. But Adam, I think your piece will be a really wonderful part of that experience, that whole trail experience. And you'll see other artwork, but then you'll come upon your piece that you certainly will see from a distance, but then up close, it's going to have that illusion as well. And also just really excited about the detailing. I did want to just add real quick while we just wait to see if anybody else has any questions or comments, that, Adam brought something up, and I do want to say that this is very important. These are the conceptual designs, and while Adam is not going to switch gears and all of a sudden do a 30-foot tall elephant, which, I think a 30-foot tall elephant would probably be beautiful, but he's not going to do that. This is the direction that he's going. However, with that said, there's some variation in what may happen in terms of the placement, the orientation, all of that. And I think, as Adam correctly mentioned, we'll work that out on site and figure out all the kind of the details, because there is a lot that goes into this, the foundation that will have to be dug for this is going to be substantial.
I would imagine.
So we're going to need to really kind of think through all of that and what is possible and what is necessary in which location. So there's still much work to be done, but I think Adam, you've got a really great start here with your conceptual design, and I look forward to working with you, on your design development.
Yes,
Well,
thank you.
Thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate this opportunity. I really do. This is, I've tried my whole life to make things like this, and now I am, and it's really exciting for me. I'm trying to, I don't express my emotion, maybe my excitement so well, but I am extremely excited by this opportunity. So it's really important for my career, and I'm really looking forward to jumping in.
Yeah, we are too. And I think that folks that come to visit will really enjoy this experience, but also people that live there and live and will use the trail regularly will see this piece and will kind of, I'm almost at the big, disappearing railway to the sky, or, meet me over there, meet me down south in the trail. So I really like that this artwork is here, and I think this area around Freeport and Pocket, it will be visible. Of course, there'll be some trees. One question came in to see if you have a title, and I think it's Wayfinder right now, right? That's the plan.
That is the plan. Yeah. I mean, it was part of the assignment, obviously.
Yeah.
But I just liked the idea of it, and it's about, the railway itself. It's a way of getting to and fro. It's, and wayfinding. It functions like a wayfinding device. So I just think it's I like my titles to be just very straightforward.
Yeah.
The thing is the thing. The title is just so we can refer to it,
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, people refer to it as they want, they probably won't even use that title.
Yeah. Well, we'll have the signage there, and I look forward to working with you on that. So if there's no other questions or comments, I'm going to conclude. Oh, we've got a new question coming in. May have talked about this, but it's on the berm on the tracks up above the actual new trail. Yes, exactly. So the trail, the way the trail runs in this section, and we didn't quite realize this until we went out to the site and saw this recently, because I didn't quite understand from the drawings what was happening. But the trail kind of dips down, and then it's not the berm that was originally out there, but it's just literally a whole other strip of land where this trail is kind of running beneath, about, I'd say 10 to 15 feet. I mean, is that safe to say?
Yeah.
At least 10 feet. The trail is here, and then up above there's just a kind of a large open flat area. So there used to be an additional berm on top of that. That is gone. That berm was utilized for other areas in the trail. But yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that up, Aaron. That was an interesting epiphany for us when we were walking the site, trying to make sure to locate exactly where Adam could locate, because originally he did want to locate on that berm. And then all of a sudden it was gone. And so we thought that this was an interesting solution, but of course, it'll necessitate, we look forward to Adam coming and visiting again, and we'll work with our public works team and other folks to make sure of the exact location. But yeah, I feel pretty confident that it's in that upper area, and will add to the already the illusion of the height. So I think that's really helpful. But then again, still visible from like Freeport Boulevard, which is a major area there. So, well, wonderful, everybody. Thank you again, Adam, for your time and your care and your passion in this work. I encourage everybody to, continue to keep up with this project. You can go, we did put it in the chat right at the beginning of the chat. It's delriotrailart.org. And I just encourage you to continue to check on that website for updates. And also, please come join us on Thursday. Thank you, Diana. Please come join us on Thursday for our final presentation, where Matthew Mazzotta, not too far from where Adam is locating, further on down the trail, Matthew Mazzotta will be presenting his design proposal, which will be the final in this 2-week installment of Brown Bag Lunch design presentations. So again, thank you from the Office of Arts and Culture for our team that's here. Beth, Linda, Justina, and Diana, thank you for your support throughout this process. And for everybody that was able to make it, or if you're listening online, we appreciate your interest, and we look forward to seeing you on the trail and continuing to follow us and be part of this Del Rio Trail process. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.